To understand how Jarasandha died, you must first hear how strangely he was born. In Magad reigned Brihadratha, a great commander and a celebrated hero, a man with everything a king could want, except the one thing he wanted most. For all his fame and power, no child had ever been born to him, and the lack of it hollowed out his days. He had married the twin daughters of the king of Kashi and vowed to love them equally, never favoring one over the other, a vow he kept scrupulously all his life. But the years passed childless, and as old age came on, the longing only sharpened. A throne means little to a man with no one to leave it to. At last, Brihadratha did what such kings do. He handed his kingdom to his ministers and withdrew into the forest with his two queens, to trade a crown for austerities and pray for what power could not give him. Under the old trees he fasted and meditated, carrying his sorrow like a stone he could not set down. He came to the sage Kausika of the Gautama line and laid his heart bare. "I have given up my kingdom and come to the forest," he said. "I am childless. Give me children." And the sage, moved to pity by the old king's plain grief, cast about in his mind for how such a boon could be granted. And as he pondered, a ripe mango dropped from the branches straight into his lap, as neat an answer as heaven ever sends. The sage picked it up and placed it in the king's hands with a blessing. "Take this, and your wish is granted." Brihadratha carried the fruit away as if it were the world itself. But now the vow he had kept so faithfully undid him. He could not give the whole fruit to one wife and slight the other. So he cut the mango cleanly in two and gave one half to each queen. Fairness itself dictated it. And fairness this once was exactly the wrong thing to do. In time both queens conceived, and the palace dared to hope. But the day of birth turned joy to horror. Each queen delivered not a child, but half of one. One eye, one arm, one leg, half a face apiece, to grisly, incomplete lumps of living flesh. The divided fruit had made a divided child. Overcome with grief and revulsion, the queens could not bear the sight. They ordered the attendants to bind the two ghastly halves in a cloth and carry them away, and the bundle was left on a heap of refuse in a back street, abandoned to the night. So the future terror of kings began his life on a rubbish pile, and there in the dark, a cannibal Rakshasi named Jara came prowling for carrion. She found the bundle and was delighted. To tender pieces of flesh, an easy meal. She gathered them up greedily, both at once, one in each hand. And in her hands, entirely by accident, the two halves came together the right way round. The moment they touched, they fused, knitting into one whole, perfect, living child, sound in every limb. The startled Rakshasi looked down at a healthy baby where her supper had been, and something in her fierce heart turned. She would not eat him. Instead, she took a beautiful woman's shape and carried the child to the palace. "This is your son," she told the king, and placed the child in his arms. Brihadratha's grief broke into pure joy. He gave the boy to his two queens, one heir at last for both. They named him Jarasandha, joined by Zara, after the demoness whose hands had made him whole. The childless king had his child. The world had its coming scourge. Jarasandha grew into a giant of a man, famous across the land for sheer strength. But his strange birth left one secret flaw. A body fused from two halves can, with force enough, be split back into two. Remember that. It is a small truth with a whole tyrant's death folded inside it. that things joined against nature stay weak at the seam. Years on, when Krishna and the Pandavas resolved to end him, Krishna read the moment exactly. Hamsa is dead, Hidimbaka is dead, Kamsa is dead, all his great allies are gone, and Jarasandha stands alone. Armies are useless against such a man. He must be drawn into single combat, and they are destroyed. The plan was set, not war, but a duel. By the code of that age, a Kshatriya could not refuse a challenge, even a barehanded one, a wrestling to the death. So Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna disguised themselves as men under holy vows, dressed in bark fiber robes, sacred darbha grass in their hands, and walked openly into Magadha and up to Jarasandha's capital. 3 pilgrims, one purpose. Jarasandha, uneasy, had been troubled by evil omens and was busy warding them off with rites and fasts of his own. Yet when 3 noble-looking strangers arrived, he received them with full respect. Their bearing spoke of high birth. He did not yet know that his omens had just walked through his door. Bhima and Arjuna would not answer his welcome. They would not soil the errand with lies. Krishna spoke for them. These two keep a vow of silence as part of their penance. They may speak only after midnight. Jarasandha, courteous, but beginning to wonder, lodged the strange guests in his hall of sacrifice and withdrew. It was his habit to visit guests under vows at their own convenience. So at midnight, he came to them and looked closer. Bowstring scars on their forearms. The unmistakable proud carriage of warriors. These were no ascetics. His suspicion hardened into certainty, and he demanded the truth of them plainly. And they gave it to him plainly. "We are your enemies," they said, "and we have come for combat to the death. Choose whichever of us you will and fight. No more disguise, no more silence. Just the challenge, laid down in the middle of the night in the tyrant's own hall." Jarasandha weighed them without fear. "Krishna, you are a cowherd. Arjuna is a boy. But Bhima is famed for his strength. Him I will fight." And since Bhima carried no weapon, the tyrant chivalrously chose to fight unarmed as well, matching bare hands to bare hands. 2 mountains squared off in the torchlight, and then they fought and fought and fought. So evenly matched were they that 13 days passed without pause, without food or rest, to colossi grappling on, while Krishna and Arjuna watched in turns of hope and dread. On the 14th day, Jarasandha at last began to tire, and Krishna caught Bhima's eye. "Now, end it." Bhima lifted the great king high, whirled him round 100 times till the hall blurred, and dashed him to the earth. Then seized his legs and tore the body clean asunder into 2 halves. He threw back his head and roared in triumph, and the roar died in his throat. For the 2 halves, lying apart, slid together, knitted, and Jarasandha sprang up whole and came at him again. Bhima stood aghast until he saw Krishna quietly pick up a straw, split it, and fling the 2 bits in opposite directions. Bhima understood. He closed with Jarasandha one final time, and when he tore the tyrant apart at his old hidden seam, he hurled the 2 halves far to the left and far to the right, so that they could never find each other again. The halves lay still. The joined man came undone at last, and the terror of 100 kings was ended on the floor of his own hall. They threw open his dungeons and freed the 86 captive kings who had been fattening for slaughter, and set Jarasandha's own son upon the throne of Magadha as a friend and vassal. Then Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna rode home to Indraprastha, 3 men who had walked into an empire unarmed and walked out, having toppled its master. The great obstacle to the Rajasuya was simply gone. With Jarasandha dead, the road to empire lay open, and the Pandavas performed the Rajasuya at last. A sacrifice of overwhelming splendor, kings from every quarter bringing tribute, and Yudhishthir consecrated emperor over all. Indraprastha reached the very summit of its glory, and yet the great festival carried one small, fatal blemish. At the ceremony of the first honor, a proud king named Shishupala would rise, insult the assembly, and force a quarrel with Krishna himself. A quarrel that could end only one way. That story comes next.